Yeah, well, of course, the big difference is that the first book, the carbon book, is about the element itself, the chemistry of the element, the history, the science history, and the use of it. Before, of course, ending with the climate issue and carbon cycling in ecosystem and how this relates to the development of climate. So there are some similarities in that context. The other book is way less specific about carbon. It's about three issues, actually. It's about tipping points in the climate system, the risk of those tipping points and feedbacks. The other is, and that's the second half of the book, is about the natural system, how we degrade nature, lose species, population declines, and so forth. So I think the main message here is that this is not only about climate and CO2. The other side of the story is equally important, and that is the continuous loss of nature. And that brings me to the third part of this book, which is about what can society do and what kind of tipping points do we need in culture, in politics, in economy, in the way of thinking, in the investment sector, to counteract the risk of feedbacks and tipping points in the climate and nature system. So, a big part of this is a more political discussion. Can we continue with growth as we have done? What kind of growth? Well, economic growth that goes on the expense of nature is obviously not going to work. On the other hand, is there another system that we could replace the current system with? And apparently really not, although many people should wish there was, including me. But so I think we have to use the current system, but then to the benefit of the nature and to climate. And we see very strong signs of this. I mean, in many ways, I think this has brought the feeling of tipping points even closer to the surface and sparked a lots of discussions in investment sectors, in industry, in politics. How can we take advantage of this situation to avoid the dangerous tipping point towards a hot house planet and rather tip the other way towards a sustainable planet? So, and of course, also the very cause of COVID-19, of Corona, is of course to do with how we treat or mistreat nature. It's a reminder that we are not that we are vulnerable, in fact, and I think also it has raised a kind of awareness about the risks that things might happen in the society, and it might also, of course, climate is not yet seen as a risk in that sense. This catastrophe that COVID-19 is perceived as, for good reasons, of course, is because it's here and now. It can hit me or my friends or dearest. We have serious politicians talking every day about what we have to do and how we should behave and so forth. Exactly the kind of actions we really would like to have seen for climate as well. Mm-hmm. But that the feeling of crisis is, of course, not that urgent for climate because it's something that's slower. We can't really see it from day to day. It's something that people feel might happen in the future and affect someone else, not me. So I think there are some psychologically interesting differences there, but still that we could learn from this. (2019) was a kind of wake-up year, partly due to the extreme fires we had worldwide, of course, record-breaking temperatures, record-breaking glacier losses, and of course also sparked by Greta Thunberg. Still, as you say, this is happening slowly. We can't really see this from day to day. So I think people in some way are concerned, but only with the one half of their brain. We are not really emotionally engaged because it doesn't feel immediately threatening like COVID-19 is. So I think that's the reason. And of course, there is a bunch of psychological effects here also that has to do with rationalizing own behavior, simply denial, and also this interesting but also risky thing of shifting baselines. We get used to new things, which is somehow good, but in this context bad, that we get adapted to less snow in winter, changing climate, loss of nature. After all, it happened on a decadal scale, and that's too slow for us to really perceive, although it's of course incredibly fast in a larger perspective. So I think, yeah, and that's one of my arguments in this last book, that of course natural sciences can explain what's going on and provide graphs and numbers and some advice is what we should do. But the only way to solve this is, of course, to bring all scientific disciplines on board, and also, of course, to stay in close contact with not only politicians, but other sectors of the society. So I had lots of interesting meeting with the finance sector and with the big industry after I released this book. So I will also have a meeting 2 days from now with the finance sector of Norway, who are really interested in the carbon cycle and in climate. So they want to learn more about this to understand. I think to me, when I give lectures on this, I have one graph that I think is a kind of wake up to many, and that explains the carbon cycle on a very rough scale, of course, but points to this fact that nature itself takes care of 50% of the CO2 emissions. And if it wasn't for this healthy forest that we had peatlands that sucked up carbon rather than released it, that we have oceans that still have a net uptake of CO2, we would really be in much more serious trouble. So this connection with the active, interactive, healthy ecosystem type of uptake of carbon and the risk of release feedbacks from these ecosystems, if they are degraded, if they are burning, if they are dried out or logged or whatever. I think that's kind of a wake up to many, how these things are interconnected and how important natural processes are in the regulation of climate. I think people are not really aware of that. Oh, and to me, this is also important because it's a strong ecosystem service, if you might call it that, argument for why it's important also to keep healthy and intact nature. So it's not only for the nature itself or for the animals or plants that's there, it's for the processes and the carbon cycle. I think it's some of the same things that we have seen COVID-19 already do, that we change habits, that we see that there is no reason to fly around to all these meetings. We can do like you and I do now. We also see that people now value the nature in the neighborhood rather than going by plane to other places in the world. So that's a kind of low-hanging fruits. And also, I think that if we could use this to gain a bit more slower lifestyle in a positive sense, more quality and less quantity, that's the kind of values I would have liked to pose on people, but now with some aid of COVID-19. And of course, obviously in the case of Norway, and that's a point, of course, both in the carbon book and in this last book, even more that in Norway we have to stop with the oil industry and really start doing what we have now said for 20 years that we should do, change gear and start doing more on renewable. But I think it's important to tell people that there is a lifestyle that is not meaning a reversion to something boring that was in the 60s. I mean, this is not about sitting freezing in a cold cabin and eating cold porridge. It's about the faster transition to a new and cool future. I mean, cool in both senses then.